My name is Josh Kahn. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Solutions Marketing. At EMC, what we do in the Global Solutions team is take the different products from our individual divisions and put them into real solutions that meet customer needs. So there's a couple components of that. One is building things like hybrid clouds, making sure they work across EMC, VMware, OpenStack, and KVM. The other is making sure that we're clear about where our specific products fit into different workloads. I know this is a group that is not huge fans of being given a whole lot of marketing speak. What I think you'll find...
But I'm going to do it anyway.
What I think you'll find about this group is we're unlike what you'd expect from traditional marketers. Before I came to EMC 4 years ago, I was running the product management organization for the Veritas Cluster Server and Storage Foundation. So that was an inbound role defining product strategy and product capabilities for what I would call a sort of a platform 2 or last generation storage management and high availability technology. You know, Aaron just gave you his background in terms of the time he spent in the field. And you know, I think you'll find the same thing from the rest of the team. So feel free to ask the more detailed questions, and we'll do our best to get you the answers you're looking for. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and put a lot of this into context. You know, what is the EMC strategy? And newer concept, what is this federation of companies that you've heard about? Has anybody heard that term, the EMC Federation of Companies? Familiar with it? Okay. So I wanted to give a little bit of that context, let you ask questions about that, and then sort of set the stage for how the EMC strategy for information infrastructure fits into that. So first off, I think what we're seeing is a lot of structural change across many industries. This is one of the things that's increasing the pace and making it difficult to be in the tech industry, but delightful to be a consumer today. I'll give you a couple of my favorite examples. Nest, right? This is a company that made thermostats. Okay? They made thermostats, which is probably one of the most physical devices you can think of. Is the temperature outside of the range? Yes or no? Okay, send a signal and tell something to turn on or turn off. They thought their mission was to reinvent unloved but important devices in the home, and they were bought for $3.2 billion in cash by Google. How could a company that makes thermostats get bought for $3.2 billion in cash? That's pretty incredible. Well, the thing that made them special was the fact that they put software in the thermostats and they gave you an application on your phone that could control these things from distance. That's what made it different. That data becomes interesting. That application becomes what drives consumers to adopt this. Another interesting one, which is more of a traditional company that's using technology, is Starbucks. So if you listen to Starbucks Q1 earnings call, they talked a lot about their payment card system. The CEO went out of his way to highlight the fact that in Q4, $1.6 billion was put on Starbucks cards. That $1.6 billion to them represents a whole bunch of new customers that are going to come into a Starbucks and be exposed to the Starbucks brand. It's a new customer recruitment potential for them.
It's all about the float.
The float. Oh, the interest.
You pay money to them. They get to keep it till you want coffee and make interest on it. The float.
That is definitely one element. But the other element is you're a Starbucks customer. You buy a Starbucks card. You give it to a Starbucks non-customer. They're going to use it. They're going to go into a Starbucks and consume it. That's an opportunity for them to get a net new customer, hopefully for life. I think the important thing is it's an example of where a retailer who traditionally has competed on coffee, customer service, food and beverage is now competing using technology and using software, and they think that's a differentiator for them. So IT has a lot of the same challenges they've always had. This is kind of an evergreen slide. You'll see different versions of this slide forever, but it's always drive down cost. It's always balance risk. But I think more than ever, there's this need to react faster to find new growth. Because if IT can't do that, the business is going to go outside and they're going to do it themselves. There's more and more capabilities outside to do these things than there ever have been in the past. So we think that that's generating a new IT agenda. So what does that new IT agenda mean? Well, there's really 5 big areas of investment that we think IT organizations are focused on. The first is the software-defined data center. So what's the software-defined data center? Why would EMC, who people traditionally think of as a hardware company, be focused on the software-defined data center? Well, number one, it's a reality. Like, people are building software-defined data centers. You look at the new IT landscape, you look at the companies like Google and Facebook, their data centers are literally software-defined. But number two, there's still a place for hardware and integrated systems in this software-defined data center. The important thing is to virtualize it and do the integration through software. And so we think that different workloads have different requirements, and we think there's an important role for both of those types of workloads in a software-defined data center, but that the software-defined data center will drive the fastest agility for IT and the lowest cost. And the team is going to talk a lot about that a little bit later. On top of that software-defined data center, that's really the foundation. There's kind of traditional enterprise apps you can run there, but you can also run a lot of new apps, and that takes platform as a service. So platform as a service is going to be the way you generate your new apps. You can run it on a software-defined data center. You could also run it on a public cloud. Those new apps tend to be written for mobile devices rather than PCs or a fixed workstation as a first principle. And the security focus is fundamentally different than it has been in the past as well. So, in the past you built very thick walls and tried to keep people out. Today, they're going to get in. You have to assume that the bad guys are inside, and you have to watch everything that's going on so that you can identify the bad guys and the bad activity and intervene very, very quickly. So does that all make sense? I notice it's very quiet in the room, and I don't trust Steve's comment that means everything's going great. I'm going to assume it means something else. Questions?
We're setting the stage for some good questions. We'll
all right.
Yeah, just realize we did spend.
Question the marketing stuff.
You're still in the marketing. We don't.
Yeah.
All right.
And we don't care enough about that to ask questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
this is a subset of defining the problem, like.
So explain what you mean by that.
We often know, we're the kind of guys that know the problem, and ladies that know the problem. We're out there doing this stuff, and we see this sort of thing. So in many cases here, you're preaching to we are a choir of sorts. You're preaching to us.
All right.
So
spent 8 hours on CDC 2 days ago. So.
All right. And so then
this is all very familiar to us.
And I guess then you'd also say, hey, you generally agree that is the problem, and those are the right areas to be focused on.
So I think you'll get a lot of questions around us on the, we just came away from the Software-Defined Data Center Symposium 2014, also hosted by Tech Field Day. And the general feeling coming away from that is Software-Defined Data Center. We gave the panel a pretty good grief on the reality of that. So you'll get, I think, some pushback from us on that area specifically. We like the idea, the reality of it. We'll challenge you a little bit on it.
Okay. All right.
Well, and that's what we're interested in seeing is your reality of, everyone's got their own little version of software-defined data centers and things like that. Yeah, I don't mind R2D2 there. It'll be really interesting to see as you guys get into it here, what you guys are doing to implement these sorts of things.
Okay.
So.
All right. That's great. And I'll let that team cover it. I think what you'll find from us is a belief that it'll be a phased transition from the existing data center to the new data center, and our goal is to help companies decide how quickly or how slowly they want to move through that transition, and that's really the cornerstone of what Viper does in the storage space, and our partnership with VMware does. Okay, so let me talk about the federation of companies that we refer to when we talk about EMC, VMware, and Pivotal. So each of these companies has its own specific focus. And those focuses are really drawn around what we think of as logical boundaries in the IT landscape. So the traditional business you know of as EMC, we affectionately refer to as information infrastructure, focused on information infrastructure, storage, and data management, as well as converged infrastructure. VMware, focused on enterprise mobility, the software-defined data center. Pivotal, big data solutions, next-generation application platform, and agile application development. So each of those things is potentially, is a company in itself. And each of those companies is allowed to partner with whoever they want. So Pivotal is going to build a platform as a service offering, Pivotal CF. That'll run on Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services will probably never buy any hardware or software from either VMware or EMC information
Josh,
infrastructure.
Where do you see the converged infrastructure and EMC, that company? I mean, it's Viper, is that?
So we have vSpecs today, which is a reference architecture.
VCE kinds of things.
And VCE,
All
right?
I got you.
But I think,
But they're not federated enough to make the slide.
well, no, yeah, that's true. So VCE, I mean, you know, they're represented right here in terms of converged infrastructure.
Don't feel obligated to explain your way out of every joke.
No, it's
Sometimes they're just meant to be funny.
it's fine.
Sometimes they're not.
But look, converged.
That's why I said meant.
Well, here, let's let it finish.
Converged infrastructure is a high priority for us. It's a strategic priority I'll talk about in a second, but it's represented right there. I don't have a pretty picture.
You know, when we
on
talk
the slide.
converged infrastructure, we're talking things like Nutanix, scale computing, those kinds
Well,
of
Scale
guys.
IO.
Yeah.
I would put it.
And
I would put,
vSAN would be a prime example. Scale IO, yeah.
I would put it in the same bucket.
Okay.
And today, our plays have been VCE through the joint venture with Cisco and VMware,
Right.
as well as vSpecs, which is a partner specific channel offering.
Right.
Over time, you'll see us expand that. You know, we fundamentally believe that that is an architecture that's going to be relevant in the future data centers, as well as, you know, the current data centers. But the one in the future data center will probably look a little different than the ones that you'd use to run enterprise apps today.
Okay. I got you.
All right, let me go back here real quick and hit the solution. So that's the choice element, right? You can choose to run VMware and you can pick another vendor storage. EMC will make sure our product works with OpenStack and KVM as well as Hyper-V. So what we're trying to do is actually something that's very, very difficult. It's not only provide complete solutions for the new IT agenda that you see along the top, but also give customers choice in between the layers. Now, what do we have going for some of these complete solutions? Well, we've got joint labs with each of the companies, and we have a Federation of Companies board that Joe Tucci chairs with the executive staff from each of the companies, where they resolve conflicts between the companies. Naturally, in a situation like this, there will be flare-up points that come up where it could be in both companies' strategic interest to invest in an area, and it's in the overall Federation of Companies' best interest to manage that and make a strategic decision rather than kind of let it play out. So it's funny that the challenge that Aaron set up at the beginning with EMC, having multiple storage platforms and needing to be clear about where those storage platforms plays, comes out again when you talk about this Federation of Companies. Software-defined storage. How should people think about VMware's vSAN and EMC's Viper? Those are the kinds of questions that need to get resolved at this level. Make sense? All right, so today what you're going to hear about is a handful of tenets of our strategy. So the first is a belief that it takes a portfolio of storage to meet the needs of today. Different workloads have different requirements. A lot of people have sort of, and I'm surprised nobody in here has done it. Maybe I've just lulled you to sleep. But a lot of people say, oh, that portfolio is just an excuse for the fact that you've done a bunch of M&A and you guys haven't integrated it well. And I think what you'll find when Aaron's done is a clear articulation of why that's absolutely not true.
So Josh, would it not be fair to say that you haven't integrated them at all, rather than integrated them well? Because I don't think there's any integration between any of those, is there?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that's not
integration. That's the product sitting over the top.
Yeah, we haven't tried to collapse them. You know, we've kept them as independent products meeting specific needs. And I think Viper we've integrated them through management, and Viper integrates them by sitting on top. But I think, yeah, that's a fair statement.
But Chris, think about why they bought a company. You know, like so often we see a company being acquired and then killed because they're collapsed into the rest of the organization. So perhaps, you know. Okay,
I guess the point I would say is I don't see any specific tech that was in any of those products being moved to be in any of the other
beyond
products.
Their little boundaries.
Yeah.
There.
So, so anything like
they moved
not the right word, that was good in one.
dedupe from Avamar into Networker.
That's not on that list.
That's
Bottom
in the
right.
right
Bottom
corner.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No.
In the small print, yeah. Carry on, sorry.
All right. No. I think it's a fair point.
That, of course, is the exception that proves the rule. But
so what you won't see is us collapse all of these things into a single product. There'll be some isolation. There's architectural differences that make sense for the kinds of workloads that we're targeting with each one. We will try to make it easier to manage and automate across this so that it can plug into a software-defined data center.
But if you made it all one product, you could call it StorageZilla.
Yeah, you could.
We already have
When, well,
He's an employee.
you know, backup is an important priority for us today. I think a lot of people don't know that EMC is actually the leader in overall backup when you put hardware and software together. Continues to be a focus for us, but the same way that we took tape out of the backup market and simplified that element of backup, we believe that over time, backup itself should be more automated, right? Why do you set primary storage policy and then backup policy and replication policy separately? Shouldn't that come automatically? If I'm going to put an application on a mission critical primary storage, shouldn't that have an indication of what my protection policies ought to be?
Yeah, but my storage vendor hasn't let me do that.
EMC is headed in that direction. I think the other question would be, why do I have to scan my host and find out if anything's changed when the storage array knows every time something's changed? Couldn't the storage array be a lot more intelligent and maybe record those changes and prevent all the host cycles and all the network traffic that goes along with that? So that's our vision for the future of backup, and that's a direction we're heading that we think will continue to drive our leadership in backup and redefine the backup space. Flash, we think, is incredibly disruptive. Hopefully people have heard of Extreme I/O. You're going to hear a lot about it today. We believe that when you design for Flash, you need a fundamentally different architecture. That's what Extreme I/O is. We also think Flash can be useful when applied to a traditional storage array in terms of driving better performance and better economics. Lastly, when you get to hyper-converged or storage that's going into the compute nodes, there's yet again a different kind of Flash and a different kind of architecture and hardware and software that you need to manage that. So a lot of people will talk about the all-flash data center is coming. We think it's really more about Flash everywhere rather than all-flash.
The all-flash data center makes as much sense as the paperless bathroom.
I couldn't agree more. That's something you should tweet. Have you tweeted that yet? We will gladly retweet that all day long. I mean, it's true. It's great. It's a great marketing slogan if you're a startup and you want to get some attention. It's utterly impossible to make that happen in the near future.
As he tweets it.
Of course.
So look, there's a couple data points I want to share. The first is, and we have to be careful as EMC because we often get accused of being protectionist. You know, so those startups who are saying, hey, it's an all-flash data center, they'll say, oh, that's EMC just protecting their spinning disk business. That's just wrong. We're just looking at the data. So the first piece of data we're looking at is the price of hard drives and MLC. Okay, they're both coming down. The gap is not going to close anytime soon. So there's going to continue to be a need to manage cost across these two types of media. The second is IDC's prediction for flash in the data center. So we went through all of their hard drive shipments, all of their flash shipment predictions, and we took out just enterprise data center. Today, it's about 1% of, or sorry, where are we? 2014, time flies. 1.5% of the data center is flash. They predict in 2017 it's going to be almost 3%. So I'm back to this is proof for your point on the fact that it's not a reality. So we intend to win in flash. We ship more flash today than any other vendor. We shipped almost 60 petabytes at the end of last year in a single quarter. Extreme I/O has been in the market now for in GA mode for coming up on a couple of quarters. We are regularly winning deals against every all-flash startup there is. They don't want to compete with Extreme I/O. The products they want to try to compete with are prior versions of our old arrays that don't have any flash in them. Our hybrid arrays can very regularly beat enterprise startup all-flash arrays in both performance and cost efficiency. Extreme I/O, when it comes to performance, is something that we haven't seen beaten in any proof of concept.
So you say you can beat all startups in cost and efficiency, or performance, whatever the exact phrase. But when you say cost, is that cost? How do you calculate the cost? Is it TCO?
So what I would say is I would calculate it as dollars per gigabyte TCO over 4 years. And what you're going to find is a hybrid array. I'm going to go back a couple slides. A hybrid array like a VNX. Take a VNX2 and put it up against, your favorite all-flash startup. This performance is going to be on par with those all-flash startups. There's going to be some variability in the performance as the array gets loaded or the performance sacks it down, or as the I/O sack it down. So you're going to have a little bit of variability, but we're going to be a lot less expensive. If you want that sustained performance and you never want to see it dip below a certain point, that's when you need to go to Extreme I/O. So the question that customers need to really ask themselves is, am I after performance as criteria 1, or am I after good enough performance at the right price point? And we think there's a lot of no man's land in between the capabilities of a hybrid array and the capabilities of an all-flash array. And that no man's land is pretty much where most of the all-flash startups exist. It's an exciting place to be today, lots of attention, lots of great slogans. We don't think that's a very sustainable place to be for them long term. They haven't gone far enough to build an all-flash array that's purpose-built for flash, and they've gone too far to provide the kind of economics that we're going to be able to provide down here. So I'm going to run out of time, and you're going to get a lot on all-flash arrays and how we view flash. So where's all that data going? Where's the other 90% of the data going? A lot of it is going into something we think of as a data lake. You've got these traditional structured data sources, relatively small. There's all these new data sources, and those are going into what we think of as a data lake. And we think HDFS and Hadoop are going to be the way to not only manage that storage, but analyze it. I mean, take this day, for example. Imagine how much data a day like this would have created 3 years ago. There wouldn't be all this video. There'd be a lot less audio. There wouldn't be nearly as many tweets going out about it. All of that data lives over in here, and there's tremendous value in that data to organizations. They need to store it, and they need to analyze it, and that's where we're going to focus on HDFS and really, really cost-effective ways to store and manage tons and tons of data. Different than performance, more on capacity. Software-defined storage is a huge focus for us. As I said before, there's a handful of components to this. First off, let me start with the traditional architecture we know. All of these traditional enterprise storage arrays will continue to have a place in the future. There's still mission-critical data that expects the infrastructure to be resilient. There's new architectures where the software and the hardware are separated from each other. It's a more cost-effective way to deploy storage in a lot of cases, but it also counts on the application to manage its own resiliency. And so you're going to have both of those kinds of applications running on top of a single infrastructure, and the Viper controller is the single way to manage that. So we're going to provide the data services to run on commodity. We're going to provide enterprise storage arrays and a single pane of glass to manage it. And you're going to hear a lot about that a little later. You asked about converged infrastructure. Today, our two big bets are vBlock and vSpecs. We're doing pretty well in both of those. We've hit the #1 position in the market. It takes a little while for these data points to roll out, so I'm showing you data from mid-year last year because we don't have fresher data from this source. What's interesting is we started vSpecs in Q2 of 2012, way after FlexPod, which was the leading reference architecture-based converged infrastructure at the time. And we overtook them in a very short period of time. And if you look at this growth rate, it's pretty phenomenal. And a big part of that is the fact that there's choice in a lot of the hardware that goes into a vSpecs. Obviously not choice on the storage because we're driving the configurations, but choice on some of the other components, the networking and the compute. And that's created a huge opportunity for the channel to add value and match their line card with something that really accelerates time to deployment. And of course, vBlock has continued to do extremely well also. Lastly, we're going to roll these into hybrid clouds. So what I've talked about so far is our storage strategy. We really believe hybrid clouds are going to be the de facto model for IT organizations to deploy IT services. Through this Viper layer, we'll integrate with VMware, obviously. We'll also integrate with OpenStack and Microsoft. And We'll support a number of different hybrid clouds, the VMware vCloud Hybrid Service, as well as service providers. And then, you know, I would just kind of wrap it up with those tenets. I mean, if you said, what are the things that we're focused on today with all of this change in driving to the software-defined enterprise with the Federation of Companies, what is EMC Information Infrastructure focused on? It's the storage portfolio, it's flash, it's HDFS and data lakes, it's software-defined storage and Viper. It's redefining data protection to sort of make data protection become more automatic and automated. It's leading in converged infrastructure. I put the plus here because you shouldn't expect us to stop at vSpecs and vBlock. I think, to your point, there's a lot more to be done there. We're not ready to talk very much about that yet, but we're definitely working on some interesting things. And putting this all into well-run hybrid clouds that work incredibly well with VMware, but also provide customer choice. Hopefully that sets the framework for today, and Aaron and the team are going to take you through the details on the rest of it. Any questions, last questions or comments for me?